The Civil War began April 12, 1861, when the Confederates invaded the Union soldiers at Fort Sumner, South Carolina. The Civil War was influenced by the inequality of slaves, and their presence being unrecognized by the Southerners. There was a gap continuing to widen between the North and the South because of a feud to whether the states should be free or slave states. This argument led to what we know now as the Civil War.
During the rise and start of the Civil War, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States was Abraham Lincoln. President Lincoln was the kind of person who was liked by everyone in the room. He was tender towards others, yet pure. He would explain things that they were and not lie to ground people's affection towards him. Our 16th president was truly an honest individual and believed in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness among all people.
The Civil War had two opposing armies: the North, which General Ulysses S. Grant was the leader of, and the South, which General Robert E. Lee was the leader of. Both armies were strong and patriotic towards their stance on the problem, and both refused to back down until April 9, 1865.
On this day, General Robert E. Lee has his troops surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant in the Northern Union at the Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. General Lee was not happy to surrender, but had to do so because of the term they had agreed upon. They agreed to have no more mass executions or violence, just to simply bond the country together. All the pieces seemed to be coming together, and Lincoln was anxious to start his plan of Reconstruction, until his life tragically ended on April 15, 1865.
As one of the most horrific assassinations in U.S. history, most people know that Lincoln's assassin was John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer. He was shot at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. while watching a play. His injuries were so traumatic that he died the next day at 7:22 a.m.
Before Lincoln died, he already had a plan for the healing process of America, and was ready to reunite the two rivaling armies together once again. His plan for uniting the North and South was based on forgiveness, which he issued in the Proclamation of Amnesty of Reconstruction to unite the states.
In the Proclamation of Amnesty of Reconstruction, he issued a general pardon to be granted to all people who took an oath of loyalty to the Union and would obey all laws. He excluded high military officials from this process because of their strong stance on their beliefs.
Lastly, Lincoln introduced the 10% plan. This plan called for at least 10% of each state's total population to take an oath of allegiance to the Union in order for them to participate in the government system. This will allow each state government who got 10% or over to elect Congress representatives for their state.
When Lincoln's life came to an end, Andrew Johnson stepped into office and took his place. Lincoln and Johnson had similar ideas for the Reconstruction process, but they were also very different.
Johnson's plan was considered more strict than Lincoln's because he wanted to restrain all former military and people who own property that valued as $20,000 or more to vote in the 10% plan. His goal was to give more voting power to smaller farmers and artisans in the South.
Lincoln's death tremendously impacted America's healing process. It left the opportunity for President Johnson to give power to the radical Republicans, which were composed of angry Southerners.
Johnson was a Southerner at one point during his life and wanted to give the South more power than they needed. This caused the South to flourish and get laws passed restricting African Americans to many